The rain hammered relentlessly against the window pane, each drop seeming to echo my heart's turmoil. My name is Ethan, and in a matter of moments, my world was about to unravel like a thread pulled too hard. The pain gnawing at my chest was an ache I had never known, a mix of betrayal and despair. My life had been a dream, one I never wanted to wake up from. Lily and I were more than just husband and wife. We were confidances, partners in crime, and passionate lovers. Our mornings began with soft kisses and playful banter, while our nights were filled with shared laughter and a fire that never seemed to dim. Then there was David, Lily's gym instructor, a seemingly ordinary figure who had woven his way into our lives. He had become more than a fitness coach. He was our friend, someone Lily felt comfortable with. We had shared countless gatherings, weekends of adventure, and secrets that bound us together. But then, with a suddenness that felt like a punch to the gut, everything changed. It was as if a storm cloud had descended upon our lives, casting a dark shadow over everything we held dear. I couldn't explain it, but something about David's presence had begun to grate on me, filling me with a sense of unease that grew with each passing day. And then I found them, David and Lily, tangled in each other's embrace, their lips locked in a passion that was all too familiar. I felt like a stranger in my own home, as if I had been transported to an alternate reality where everything I knew and loved was a cruel illusion. The sound of the rain mixed with the pounding of my heart as I stood frozen, watching the scene unfold before me. A part of me wanted to scream, to lash out at them both for betraying me in this way. But another part of me felt numb, as if I was watching someone else's life play out before me, unable to comprehend how this could be happening to me. I turned and walked out of the room silently, the patter of the raindrops on the roof of the house, the only sound to accompany me. I walked down the hallway, past the family photos that now seemed like false memories, and into our bedroom. I stood there in the darkness, the only light coming from the occasional flash of lightning outside. It was then that I made a decision. I couldn't stay in this house, in this life, with the knowledge of what had happened. I grabbed my suitcase and began to pack, throwing in clothes and mementos without a second thought. As I zipped up the bag, I heard footsteps behind me. "Ethan, wait," Lily's voice called out, hesitant and shaky. I turned to face her, seeing the guilt etched across her face. "There's nothing left to say, Lily," I said, my voice cold and devoid of emotion. She walked towards me, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Ethan, don't go. We can work this out. You are the love of my life, and I can't imagine living without you." I shook my head, feeling the weight of the pain crush my soul. "How could you do this to me, Lily? How could you betray me in this way?" "I'm sorry, Ethan. I never meant to hurt you," she pleaded, reaching out to touch my arm. I stepped back, shaking my head once again. "It's too late for apologies now, Lily. I need to get away from here. From you. Maybe someday I'll find a way to forgive you. But I can't stay here and pretend everything is okay." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving Lily standing alone in the darkness. The rain had stopped, and the only sound was the slamming of the front door as I walked out onto the porch, my suitcase in hand. I looked out into the night, the only light coming from the occasional flicker of lightning. I felt lost, alone, and betrayed. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay here. As I walked down the driveway, I heard Lily's sobs behind me, but I couldn't bring myself to turn around. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with the tension between us. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive her for what she had done, but I knew that I needed to take some time and distance to figure things out. I reached my car and opened the trunk, throwing my bag in and slamming it shut. As I climbed into the driver's seat, I looked up at the house one last time, taking in the memories of a life that was no longer mine. And with a heavy heart, I turned the key in the ignition and drove away into the night. The headlights of passing cars blurred as I drove aimlessly, trying to clear my mind of the betrayal and heartache that had taken over. The rain had started up again, light droplets hitting the windshield like a constant reminder of what had just happened. I drove for hours, not really knowing where I was going, until I found myself at a small motel on the outskirts of town. The neon sign buzzed above my head, casting an eerie glow in the darkness. Without a second thought, I parked my car and walked into the lobby, the smell of stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener assaulting my senses. The woman at the front desk looked up as I approached, her eyes lingering on my disheveled appearance. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice rough and uninterested. "I need a room," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Name?" she asked, her eyes now fixed on her computer screen. "Ethan," I replied, my fingers nervously tapping against the counter. "Okay, Ethan. Room 13 is available," she said, sliding a key across the counter towards me. I took the key, feeling the weight of it in my hand. "Thanks," I said, turning to walk towards the room. As I opened the door and stepped inside, the smell of stale cigarette smoke and mildew assaulted my senses. The room was small and dingy, the bed unmade and the carpet stained, but I didn't care. At least it was somewhere to rest my head. I sat down on the edge of the bed, feeling the ache in my chest return. I didn't know what the future held for me, but I knew that I needed to figure things out on my own. As I lay down on the bed, my mind raced with thoughts of what had just happened. I closed my eyes, hoping that sleep would take me away from everything that was happening. But as soon as I did, the memories of Lily and David together haunted me. My mind conjured up images of their embrace, their bodies intertwined with each other, and all the while, my heart felt like it was shattering into a million pieces. I tossed and turned, trying to find a comfortable position to rest in, but the bed was lumpy and uncomfortable. The sound of rain continued to fill the room, and the neon light outside flickered through the thin curtains, casting an eerie glow over everything. I couldn't stay here for long. I needed to figure out what to do next, where to go, and how to heal from this deep wound that had been inflicted upon me. But where would I go? Who could I turn to in this moment of despair? The sound of a car engine outside the motel room brought me back to reality. Pulling my knees to my chest, hoping that whoever it was wouldn't bother me. But as the sound grew closer, I heard a knock at the door. I hesitated, not knowing who could be there, but curiosity got the better of me, and I slowly got up, shuffling towards the door. As I opened it, I was met with a sight that I never expected to see. Standing in front of me was a woman, her long brown hair cascading down her back, dressed in a tight red dress that hugged her curves perfectly. Her eyes were a deep shade of green, and they seemed to glow in the dim light of the motel room. "Hello, Ethan," she purred, stepping closer to me. "I've been waiting for you." I took a step back, feeling a strange mixture of fear and desire wash over me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. She smiled, showing off a set of perfectly white teeth. "I'm just a woman who knows what you're going through," she said, her voice dripping with seduction. I couldn't deny the attraction that I felt towards her, but something inside me told me that this wasn't right. "I don't think this is a good idea," I said, taking another step back, but she didn't seem to care. She closed the distance between us, her hand reaching out to touch my chest. "You need someone to take your mind off things," she whispered. That was all it took for me to give in. I didn't know her name. I didn't know anything about her. But in that moment, I didn't care. I needed something, someone, to distract me from the pain. We tumbled onto the bed, her hands exploring every inch of my body as I forgot about Lily and everything that had just happened. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt my body stirring, reacting to another human being. As I felt her hands running up my inner thigh, I could feel myself becoming hard. She glanced up at me as she reached inside my pants, unbuttoning them and sliding them off of my body. I wasn't sure if I could trust this woman, or if I even wanted to, but I knew that the moment I saw her, I had to have her. She reached around her back and unzipped her dress, letting it fall to the floor as she climbed on top of me, straddling my hips. My cock was rock solid as she slid towards me, hovering over it with her wetness. She opened her mouth to say something, but all I could think about was her kitty. I felt the tip of my manhood brush up against her quickly, and before she could say another word, I slid myself inside her. She let out a small moan as I filled her inch by inch. She was warm and wet, and the pleasure that I felt was immense. We moved together in perfect unison, her hips grinding against mine as we both teetered on the edge of pleasure and bliss. Her fingers dug into my shoulders as we continued to pleasure each other senseless. My manhood sliding in and out of her slowly as she arched her back and moaned my name. I wasn't thinking about anything except for the pleasure between us, and soon I could feel my orgasm growing with each thrust. She let out a small cry of ecstasy as her body shook with pleasure, her pussy clenching around my cock as I continued. "Ethan," she whispered breathlessly. The sound of my name on her lips was enough to send me over the edge, and I soon found myself climaxing hard. I felt my cock explode inside her, my body shaking with pleasure as I shot streams of cum deep inside of her. I could feel each spasm of my cock as my seed ruptured from my body, filling her completely. We were both breathing heavy as I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her closer. She looked up at me, her eyes full of lust and desire, as though this was all a premeditated plan. "Thank you," she whispered, leaning in to kiss me. "Thank you," I replied back to her, my lips lingering on hers. When she pulled back, I felt my cock slide from her, the mixture of our juices trickling down my leg. Annabelle looked down at me, her green eyes sparkling in the light. "I'm Annabelle," she said, her voice dripping with seduction. "Annabelle," I repeated back to her. And then we did something that I never thought I would. We made love. The next morning, I awoke next to her, her eyes still heavy with sleep as she stared back at me. "What's wrong?" I asked, propping myself up on my arm. I could tell that she wanted to tell me something very important, but instead she shook her head. "Nothing," she said, closing her eyes. I knew that something was on her mind, but for now, I decided to let it go. I leaned in close to her, breathing in her sweet scent before pressing my lips against hers. The warmth of her body against mine was calming, and I could feel her body shudder with pleasure as I ran my fingers down her naked back. Just as I was about to slip inside her again, I heard the sound of a door slamming somewhere in the distance. I sat up, straddling her hips as I glanced out the window. "What's wrong?" she asked, opening her eyes. "Nothing," I replied, "but I think I need to go." She sat up and asked, "Where are you going?" "I don't know," I said, grabbing the rest of my clothes from the floor and getting dressed. "Away from here. Come back to me soon," she said with a smile before I slipped my shoes on and left the room. I glanced over my shoulder at her, not knowing if I would ever come back, before walking briskly towards my car. I got in and started the engine, squinting at the bright sun that was now shining outside. Then I just drove. There was no destination in mind, no place to go, no one to talk to. It was just me and the road, and together we would figure out what to do. I drove for hours, taking in everything around me as I tried to think of how I was going to move forward.